rain. A cistern was a hole in the ground where it was lined with rocks and brick, and between the crevices of the bricks and rocks was mortar, and it was placed in there and it was sealed. And so the cistern had a unique capacity that none of the other holes in the ground had. That cistern had the capacity to hold water. And more importantly, it could add more water as the water was increased into it. The cistern could collect rainwater. It could have water added to it from a bucket. So a properly functioning cistern would not go dry. A properly functioning cistern would increase the level of water as the water was added to it. He uses the term cistern to describe appetites. So if the cistern was empty, then it had a defect in the bottom and all the water would run out. Cistern is not a well in the first sense. It's not a source for water. It's to collect water, to hold water. St. Paul says your soul is prayed that for us, our soul to be filled with the utter fullness of God. So for John of the Cross, the cistern is to be filled with the utter fullness of God, the capacity to hold things divine. If the cistern had a hole, would have a third of the water in it, that means it was a defective third up. Halfway, 2/3. But if it was filled all the way up to the top, it was a properly functioning cistern. It would be filled with the utter fullness of water. And that's how a cistern could lose its contents, defects in the cistern. And you would know where the defect is just by the water level. And so this is how the soul leaks out God, by the appetites for John of the Cross. And how do you diagnose this in the soul? It's clear and simple. For us to understand this, just look at the makeup of the soul first. Intellect, memory, will, those are the faculties. There can be leaks in those faculties. The proof of the faculties are easy. You know that Jesus spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. You can understand how Jesus could be thirsty in the desert, could be hungry in the desert. That understanding of the thirst and hunger in the desert is in your intellect. And you can recall the last time you were thirsty or hungry prior to today, and that thirst or hunger is in your memory. So if you're presently thirsty or hungry now, too bad. I can take correct. But that's in your will, you see? So I just proved that you have faculties. Now, if we know that leaks occur in the intellect, memory, and will, that's where the appetites reside. In intellect, will, and memory. And that's where the faculties spill out its contents. Well, the question we ask is, why don't people just plug up the leaks? Why don't they remedy their faculties? Well, they may not know, as you know. They may not even know the teachings of the church. They may not, the second is, they may not be interested in making the effort. They're not committed to plugging the leaks. It takes effort. Look at poor Brother Lawrence to plug his leaks up. It took him 10 years. You know, for Holy Mother, she's the patron saint of wafflers. How long did it take her to plug up the leaks, right? So the third answer may lie in that. And they may misunderstand the teaching of John of the Cross, and it's not a doctrine. Not this, not this, not this. Since nothing equals God, the person who loves and is attached to something other than God offends God exceedingly. That's a difficult statement. But Holy Mother says the same thing. Just more nicely. But it's the same thing. So the church says, love your neighbor. And the church, when she brings people together in marriage, says, love one another. People read this and say, well, John of the Cross went off the deep end. He didn't really mean that. But people try to read it and explain it away. But St. John of the Cross's writing is very clear. That this is a hard doctrine, but it's very livable. And this is where Brother Lawrence makes it livable. The doctrine of his not this, but God alone. The presence of God through your day. The presence of God through your day plugs up leaks. When you're practicing it and you're keeping God through your whole day, and your life, it's going to plug up the leaks. Because now everything that you're doing is now for the greater glory of God. And for John of the Cross, this is really important. Because the appetites do affect us in our life. Memories carry emotions. Intellect impacts how I think and what I remember. And it affects the will. And so for John of the Cross, when he looks at this, and he looks at the three, intellect, memory, and will, and you go to the one book of the Ascent, chapter 6 through 11, that's all his appetites. And he's saying this is why disordered appetites are problematic. Because there is something wrong. Because they impact your soul. And this is how they impact your soul. He speaks of disordered appetites darkening and blinding the person. Disordered appetites defile the person. Disordered appetites weaken the soul. So they blind, defile, and weaken. Those three things. So when he says your appetites can blind you, what part of the soul gets blinded? Well, the intellect is blinded by disordered appetites. Now, just a simple example. You can get caught up in, let's just use video games. You can get caught up playing video games for 3 or 4 hours. And you start out playing a video game, and, oh, that was pretty fun. That was relaxing. The next thing you know, you're playing for half an hour. Next thing you know, you're playing for an hour next week, and then you're playing for 2 hours next week. You're playing for 3 hours next week, and you're saying, it's not wasting my time. I shouldn't be doing this. And your intellect knows that. It's wrong. But what happens is, even though you know that you're playing too much video games, your intellect is saying that, and the light is coming on to guide your soul, but it's not working well. It's telling you shouldn't do this, but now you've weakened the will, and so it can't respond. So your intellect becomes blinded. Because the intellect helps you to choose and guide. And it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, because the way the intellect guides everyone has enough intelligence. So this isn't about being a rocket scientist or anything, or a PhD. This is what St. John of the Cross means by being blinded. Now, I worked with a person, and this person was pretty well off financially. And I was watching the inventory, and the inventory wasn't going right. And I'm saying, dang, I'm trying to balance this inventory, and it's not coming out right. And I know what's wrong. So I'm going back, and the guy's stealing furniture every week. He's making more money than me. But he kept stealing one piece every week. This is, he finally got caught. But this is what happens when we have a blind intellect. It does the thing. Its appetite does the thinking for us. I stole it once, I get away from it again, I'll do it again. And I'll keep doing it, and I'll keep doing it. And St. John of the Cross says, when this happens, now you've lost your freedom. You see? The person's being guided by the appetite, the disordered appetite. He's lost his freedom. The intellect is not doing what it's supposed to do. It's blinded. And as a result, the choice is blinded. And for St. John of the Cross, the goal of the role of the intellect is to lead it to freedom. But now the soul is not free because it's trapped in a lie. And so blinds the intellect. And to some degree, we talked about the weakened will. But this is what the second thing does. It weakens the will. Because it makes those choices easier again. I stole it once, I can do it again. And I can do it again, and I can do it again. It's not simply the intellect's not working, it's you don't have enough strength in your will to fight. The intellect doesn't stop you, but you don't have the strength to stop it. It becomes a habit. The appetite's disordered, and as a result, you end up with these weakened wills and these bad habits. And the memory is defiled. We have all kinds of memories. We have memories of events, scars, some memories of scars. We have memories of sadness. We have memories of having to recite the Declaration of Independence in the 4th grade in school, forgetting the 3rd line. We have all kinds of memories. But St. John uses the memory as a way of something being imprinted upon you. And so it's sort of like something being tattooed on into your brain, into your mind. And once something's in there, how do you get rid of it? Once something is imprinted in the memory, it's not simply that it's, and there's different depths of imprinting in there. And so when something's in the memory, and the memory triggers the intellect, and the intellect says, oh, that was pretty nice. I'll go steal another piece of furniture. I remember doing it last week. And the will says, yeah, that's really cool. And then you have another nice piece of furniture in your house. The other bad example we can use in our world is pornography today. Once that gets stamped in the intellect, right? How do you get rid of that? And that becomes a problem because it's imprinted in the memory. And you can't remove it. You just can't pull out the memory. You just can't pull it out and clean it up. Because it now becomes defiled, you see? And now your soul's, you go to confession and get rid of the sin, but you still have the habit, you see, back in the mind. And it's in the memory. So the way you have to do it is you have to overlay what's in the memory with that which is sacred, you see, with that which is beautiful, which that is true. And so when we're looking at these appetites and how to be generous with God, and for St. John of the Cross, this is now how much time do I have? Ooh, I better end. This is now the ending. This is now suppose your hunger is instead of for all of these disordered appetites, now suppose your hunger is for God. And now suppose that you're hungering for God, and I can tell you that you can still hunger for God, and you can still love your husband, and you can still love your children, and you can still love your job, and you can still love sweeping the carpet in your house, and you can still love mowing your lawn, and you can still love living. Now, what if your hunger is for the presence of God while you're doing all of those things? See, now your soul is a well-ordered soul, and it can be filled up with the things of God. So this is what the goal of the Carmelite is to be filled with the utter fullness of God. And so this is St. John of the Cross is bringing this to us, and Brother Lawrence is bringing this to us, because this is a great boot camp for us, practicing the presence of God. living in the presence of God, because that's the heart and the goal of a Carmelite. And so, in closing this, I encourage you, maintain your orientation for God, continue to desire Him, and to know that as you give generously to God, God will always give generously to you. God bless you, and God bless your vocation.
Thank you.
I know 2 confessionals are in, as you were going to the church, to the right and to the left before you go into that church. There's 2 little side altars there. And then Father Ryan's going to be in one of the classrooms. And hopefully there'll be another one too, but we'll see. Okay? So I will see you back.